So life is a game. Whose rules are you playing by? If you don't like the results that you're having, then I encourage you to consider changing how you're playing. I wonder if that ever occurred to you. It doesn't occur to most of us. And the results of that can be very profound, for better or for worse. So today I'd like to invite you to explore this possibility of discovering how you play the game. Well, first of all, that you are playing a game, and then how you play the game, and then the possibility that you could change how you play the game. So consider for a moment, have you ever seen a group of children playing a game? And have you noticed that sometimes some children tend to play games in a way that's very competitive, and then they start getting very upset because they're not winning? Now, possibly, maybe not everybody here, but possibly as an adult, you've had this realization that it doesn't matter whether you win at a children's game, right? Like if you play games with children and you're playing, Chutes and Ladders or some game like that, you might know, hopefully, that it doesn't matter if you win. But have you considered that you might be playing the game of life to win, and that might be miserable? Just like if you were trying to play Chutes and Ladders to win, it would be miserable probably, right? Because you're not always going to win, especially not if you're playing it in that way, right? If you've defined winning in this very narrow way, like I get there first, or I get the most, or I get the most points, or everybody loves me all the time, no matter what, or I'm always perfect. If that's how you define winning, then you're not going to be very happy. But a lot of people are playing this way. And I think part of what inspired me to address this is that I get a fair number of messages from people, and I see a fair number of comments on videos where people are expressing a kind of desperation. Sometimes they'll just outright say that. They'll just say that they're desperate, that they feel that they're in a very desperate place in their life, that nothing has been working, and that something has to work, and very soon. Because if it doesn't, then all is lost. Well, I understand. I've been there, done that many times. Many, many times. And so I know firsthand how just terrible that is. It's just awful. And it doesn't get better if you keep playing that way. I promise you, it really does not. In fact, it will get worse. I'm reminded, I don't know if I've told this story in the Monday meetings or not, but if I have, I'll be repeating myself, but I'll tell this story now briefly. When it was about 15 years ago, I was not insane, because I knew my thoughts were insane. So I was not insane, but I had very insane thoughts, and I had very insane concerns. Very obsessed with being pure and perfect, because I thought that being pure and perfect was my only possible salvation in life. I was certain that if I didn't achieve perfection and purity, then all was lost. And my rules for how to be pure and perfect involved a lot of things, including I had to only think pure and perfect things. I had to only see pure and perfect things. I had to only eat pure and perfect things. Everything had to be pure and perfect. And by the way, that's impossible. And it's a surefire recipe for absolute misery. In case you wanted one, if you wanted to be absolutely miserable, do that. I guarantee you will be absolutely miserable if you do that. But there I was, I was living out of a cargo van, because all of my housing situations that I had attempted were not pure and perfect enough. And so I was in search of the pure and perfect place, the Holy Land somewhere. And I was driving around madly looking for it, and I never found it. I looked a lot of places, but I never came across it. And I had all these rules for how I was going to achieve my purity and perfection day by day. You know, it was just like moment to moment. I had to ensure that I wasn't thinking the wrong things and seeing the wrong things. And of course, I would see and think all the wrong things, because there I was driving around. At that time, I think I was in Wisconsin or Minnesota when this story takes place, and I was driving around looking for my pure and perfect food for the day, and I kept seeing all the imperfect and non-pure things, which for me it was like all the symbols of the worst for me at that time were Walmart and Coca-Cola and McDonald's. Well, of course, in Middle America, there's an awful lot of those things. It's very difficult not to find those things. So I was encountering them all over the place. And but I remember very distinctly that I had this realization, which was that each time that I was in this very desperate place where I thought, I have to get it right, I have to get it right, I have to avoid thinking of the thing, I have to find the pure and perfect place, then without fail, things would get worse. Okay, so if I remember I was driving, and it was like, because I said Walmart was one of the evils of for me at that time, and there was like this train of Walmart trucks that passed me. I mean, it was surreal. I mean, there must have been like 20 of them. And so I was just having these experiences, and it dawned on me that I was just doing everything wrong. I was playing the game in the wrong way. And things didn't change for me in a flash in that moment, but it was a very, very important realization, because it really clicked for me in that moment. I realized that I was doing this to myself in a way that I hadn't realized prior to that. I mean, on some level, I knew that I was doing it to myself, of course, but in that moment, I really realized that I was doing it to myself on a much deeper level than I had previously realized. And so the way in which we play the game matters a great deal. And if you're playing the game thinking that it's all desperate, it will just keep getting more desperate. It really will, because things got, in my own experience, they got super desperate. I mean, they got even worse after that a little bit, and before they started to get better. But they've been getting worse progressively over many years. I mean, I had really been trying very, very hard to get things right in my life. I had put so much effort into getting things right. I mean, I had done so many things that I thought were the right things that were going to save me, that were going to fix me. You know, I read all the books, I went to all the workshops, I did all the trainings, all the meditations, all the things. You know, I was in yoga classes for 2 hours every day. I was doing all the stuff. I was doing pranayama all night long. You know, I was doing all the stuff because I was desperate. And I just thought, if I just keep doing more of the things, this somehow, and if I just try harder, this is going to fix it. But what had not occurred to me up to that moment was how I was framing it. I was choosing to play the game in a way that was going to be very painful and miserable. So if you're not satisfied with the results in your life, I really encourage you to question how you're playing the game. And this can have enormous impact on your life, absolutely life-changing. I'm not suggesting that it will necessarily be an overnight thing. It could be, but chances are it won't be, right? So if you expect that it has to be an overnight transformation where you think, you ponder on this idea of how you play the game, and that should just instantly transform your life, you're probably going to be disappointed. And if that's the case, then you'll probably give up on it, and then you'll desperately move on to the next thing, thinking, if I just do the next thing the right way, if I go to the next workshop, read the next book, do the next meditation, do the whatever thing, you think then that's going to fix it. The next diet, the next whatever, then you're probably going to continue to have the same kinds of results, because it's how you're playing. And so instead of just continuing to play in the same way, but changing it's like I'm going to mix metaphors, but I often talk about this business of rearranging the furniture. So if you just switch to the next thing, the next workshop, the next technique, the next this, the next that, it's like you're just rearranging the furniture. You haven't actually fundamentally addressed how you're playing the game. If you don't know how you're playing the game, if you don't know what the rules are, if you don't know why you're doing it, if you don't know what your actual aim is, if you don't know if you don't know who you are playing the game, if you don't know any of these things, nothing's really fundamentally going to change. All you're going to do is just add more drama and more mess to the whole thing. It's going to be more complicated, more painful. And so really, I really strongly encourage you to question how it is that you're playing the game. So again, think back to this example that I gave of the children playing the game, and these young children, they're all taking it very seriously. You know, I've got to win this round of Chutes and Ladders. Like, it's life or death. You know, I have to win. And, oh, you're ahead of me, and now I'm gonna try to sabotage you. You know, I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna knock your piece off the board. I'm gonna scream and kick and do all kinds of things. I mean, that doesn't sound fun at all. It sounds absolutely awful. And so we can learn from that and apply that to the rest of our lives. So just take a look and notice how you're doing that in your own life. So think about, in your life, what is it that you're actually trying to accomplish? Most people probably haven't even asked themselves that question. I know I certainly hadn't. For a very long time, it never even dawned on me to ask that question. What is it that I really want? So most people are just kind of going along. They're just kind of doing whatever everybody else has done. They've not really questioned for themselves, what are they really wanting? So for example, for a long time, I thought I just wanted a bunch of money. And I made a bunch of money. And then I realized that was kind of a rude awakening. It's like, oh, well, and now what? I'm so miserable. So if you don't know what you want, then you're going to be probably playing the game all wrong, because you have to know what you want. Otherwise, how do you know how to play? So get clear on what you want. Now, a lot of the time, the way people are playing, it's based on these old ideas that have just been sort of recycled around without being questioned deeply, like being right, getting the most stuff, being adored by everybody all the time, fame, recognition, acknowledgement, comfort. So if you're thinking that you need those things, if that's how you're playing the game, you're probably going to get the same kind of results that most people get, because that's how most people are playing. So you could just take a look and see, how's that working out for people, generally speaking. Doesn't seem that it's working out that well. So that might cause you to question whether those are good ways to play the game. I would suggest probably not. So then, and by the way, that tends to lead to a lot of desperation. So I'll actually suggest to you what I think is a very useful way to play the game. I see comments, people are suggesting some things, and a lot of those I'm sure are fine. I've not read all of them, but at an even more fundamental level, I will suggest to you something for your consideration, which is this: learning. What if you were to play the game with that as your aim, just to learn? How might that change things for you? Now, I know it doesn't sound sexy and flashy and all that. Learning. Gee, what's that going to do for me? How's that going to get me the Ferrari? How's that going to get me all the things that I think I need? Well, it may or it may not. As it turns out, it's probably going to be it will probably help you to get those things better than the way that you've been trying to get those things. But more importantly is this: if that's how you actually, if that's the underlying aim, if that's what you're really aiming for, then it's basically impossible for you to lose. Whereas if you say, in order for me to win, I have to achieve these other things, whatever they are. So I saw, people, let me just open up the chat so I can read some of the things that people wrote in there. Stability, prosperity, know myself. Hey, how about that? That's great. That's about learning. Peace and happiness, joy. So a lot of those sound financial freedom. Okay, so some of those are what come part and parcel of learning. But some of them, let's say like financial freedom. So financial freedom is something that, can you achieve that? Yes. If you apply the basic principles, you can achieve that. Okay, basic principles, just for review, just for those who don't know. Use the power of your attention. Whatever you put your attention on, that's what grows. If you want financial freedom, you put your attention consistently on financial freedom. It will grow in your life. The other end of that, though, is that then there will be things, you will have interference to that. And that will show up in the form, primarily in the form of limiting beliefs. It can show up in other forms, but for the sake of this, biggest bang for your buck will be limiting beliefs. So identify the limiting beliefs, release them. If you do that consistently every day, put your attention on what you actually want, financial freedom. By the way, don't put your attention on what you don't want. Most people make this mistake. They put their attention on what they don't want. They say, I want financial freedom. And then what they're really putting their attention on is, I want to get out of lack. Well, guess what? Then you're putting your attention on lack. Are you going to get more of that? Yes. So you have to be clear about what it is you want, independent of what it is you don't want. So you have to be clear that what you want is financial freedom. You have to actually recognize that as a thing in and of itself, independent of lack, and then keep your attention on that. Then notice what limiting beliefs come up and release those limiting beliefs. People are going to say, how do I release limiting beliefs? I'm not going to go into that today, other than just to say, if you have the intention to release it, eventually that's sufficient. So if you just consistently, persistently have the intention to release it, it will eventually release. So if you just do those things, you can achieve pretty much anything. I mean, well, let me say, you could achieve anything if you consistently put your attention on it and release whatever is in the way. For some things, that's going to take longer than others. Like if you want to be able to fly in your body to Jupiter and back, that may or may not take you a relatively longer time, because you might have more resistance to that. There might be more interference, because just at a basic human level, there's a consensus for most of us that that's impossible. So there'll be more resistance to overcome. That might take you multiple lifetimes to achieve that. So, but if you persist, eventually it'll be yours. So you can achieve anything with those basic principles. But here, what I'm really getting at today is to take a look at a lower level, because great, you want those things. You want the financial independence. You want all, you want the loving relationships. You want all this thing. Great, fine, wonderful, have it. And those are still conditions for what you really want. So get clear on what you really want. And I'm proposing what you really want is to learn. And some people have gone straight for it, and to know myself, right? So it's about learning about yourself. But we could just generalize that in terms of just learning. So if you play the game to learn, what I'm proposing to you today is that this can give you so much you really can't even begin to imagine it. It's really an incredible thing, because if you think about, if your real aim is to learn, then no matter what happens, you can succeed, because then failure becomes impossible. What we would call failure is really just an opportunity to learn. It's just feedback, right? So then life, the game, is an opportunity for learning. You take action, you get feedback. That feedback offers you something, a possibility of more learning, right? So you say, gee, I think that if I do this thing, then I'm going to get this result. And then you find out, if you do that thing, what's the result? And based on that feedback, you learn, right? You say, I did that thing. So I have an intention. My intention is to express love. I think that if I take this action, it will effectively express love, and I'll get feedback that will be that will let me know that I was successful. So I take that action. I think if I say these things in this context, this is going to be an expression of love, and I'll get feedback that lets me know. And so I take that action. I say those things, and then I get feedback that lets me know, boy, that was not well received at all. That did not work at all the way that I expected. Now, if I'm thinking that the point here is for me to win in terms of getting everybody to always approve of me and love me and accept me and like me and always having the reactions that I expect and want in life, then that's a tremendous failure. So then as soon as that happens, then I'm deflated and I retreat and I say, oh, I can't believe that happened. I'm such a failure. I'm a loser. Nothing ever works out for me. Nobody loves me. I'm bad. I'm wrong. And my life is desperate, and I just have to go hide in a hole. But if the way I play the game is just to learn, then I say, gee, isn't that interesting? I thought that what I expressed coming from a place of love, I thought was going to have a different result. And instead I got this result. Well, let me go back and take a look and see what happened. And then I can learn something. And if I'm really honest about that, if I'm really sincere about that, then I will learn so much. And every moment of my life will be so rich, so meaningful, so beautiful. Of course, I could twist that in a way that's not quite as useful. Still better than the way most people play the game, which would just be like, so I want to just perfect how it is that I play this game so that I can get the results that I'm wanting. That's okay. But what I'm really pointing to here is to know yourself, to learn about yourself. So if I'm just using every opportunity to learn about myself, if I think that I have a loving intention and I express that, and I don't get the response that I was expecting, then I can just take a look and see, well, what did I not know about myself? I thought I knew something, but I must not have known something. I must have overlooked something. So let me find out. And what it does is it removes so much of the resistance. I don't have to defend anything. I don't have to protect anything. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to know everything. I don't have to know that everybody doesn't have to love me all the time. I just get to learn. So honestly, it's pretty much all I had to say. I mean, honestly, if you just did that much, I promise you, your life would be, it would be so much easier, so much nicer, so much better. I guess the question is just what holds people back from that? And, okay, so here's what I guess holds people back from that is a couple of things. So one would be attachment to the old way, right? So thinking that the old way is the only way. I have to win in the old way. I need to get all this stuff, and I need people to approve of me, and I need all this stuff. So then what you need is an effective way of dealing with that. Because maybe on a certain level, it makes sense what I'm saying. Hopefully it makes sense. I don't know if I've presented it so thoroughly, clearly that it makes sense to everybody, but it makes sense to me. So hopefully it makes sense on a certain level that if you change the rules that you're using to play the game, so that instead of all the old ways, which don't give you good results, you can just approach it as, this is an opportunity to learn, specifically to learn about myself, in which case then every moment guaranteed can be success. Because if I fail, it's an opportunity to learn, which means it's a success. If I succeed, it means I've learned, and there's still more opportunity for me to learn even more. So it's a success. So if my aim is just to learn, I can keep on learning. And so every opportunity, everything is always an opportunity for more learning. So it's always success in that way. And I don't know there may be other ways of framing it that would be equally useful. They would all be similar though. They're like, maybe you could frame it as it's all about loving. If you frame it the right way with that, that would work. Okay. So I'm not saying learning is the only way that could work, but learning is a good way that works. So hopefully that kind of makes sense on a certain level to you, but then maybe there are these other ways in which there seems to be some conflict there. Like, how can I make that transition? Sounds good in theory, but how do I do that? Because at the end of the day, I still feel stressed if I'm not paying my bills or whatever. Okay. Well, so a couple of things about that. Number one is so self-honesty is enormously helpful. Because if you there's this step, what is that definition of insanity? Is you keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. But most of the time, that seems to be how we tend to approach things, is we just keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. And so it's really useful to be honest with yourself about that and notice that I'm still expecting that I'm going to get different results, even though I'm about to do the same thing that I've always done. So if I keep doing the same thing that I've always done, the chances are I'm going to keep getting the same kind of results that I've always gotten. If I want to get different results, I probably have to do it differently. So recognizing that the way in which you've been playing the game is not giving you the desired results could be really helpful. But you have to be honest about that. It's not that hard to be honest about it. It's actually pretty easy to be honest about it. All you have to do is just commit to being honest about it. So one way to do that is that you can just insert a little pause. Learn to insert pauses in your life. It will be really helpful. Just a little pause. I mean, that little pause could help you think about how many things in your life, how many choices did you make where if you had just a little pause, you could have done it better. So if you just learn to insert a little pause before you make choices, it could really help yourself a lot. You don't have to have, again, a lot of this stuff is so simple. You don't have to, go on a week-long retreat. You don't have to go on an ayahuasca retreat. You don't have to do all those things. I mean, if you're going to do that, do it, whatever. But you don't actually need those things in order to get better results in your life. What you need are just simple things that you can actually implement in your life, like a little pause. Again, it doesn't sound sexy. That's why a lot of people will not do it, right? Because they think, well, it has to be sexy. It has to be flashy. It's got to be this big psychedelic thing. I've got to, it's got to be something that I could justify, that going on all the thousands of dollars that I've spent on stuff. I've got to be able to justify that with something really flashy. Whereas I'm just saying, just a little pause. But think about it. If you just inserted a little pause. Yeah, I love that little pause. P-A-W-S. That's so cute. P-A-U-S-E. If you insert a little, and somebody says ayahuasca helps a lot. I'm just, so the question I'm only going to address this because this comes up a lot from people. I don't know about a lot. It comes up too often for my liking. So with all those things, all the psychedelics and all the rest of it, just ask yourself, how many of those is it resulting in a real positive, lasting change in your life? Again, self-honesty. Now, if you can say yes, and you can point to, then I challenge you, list out what those positive changes are. If you can actually list out the positive changes that you can attribute directly to those things, great, then it worked for you. But I will suggest that for most people, they don't get those results. What people do get is a lot of insight. So if you want a lot of insight, take some mushrooms. I mean, unless you have a bad experience, in which case you might have a lot of insight, but it might screw you up. But if it's a positive experience, I'm putting it in air quotes, then you might have a lot of insight. But guess what? Insight is, you can get insight from a lot of things. Insight does not actually necessarily translate into real change in your life. So with so many of these things, it's not about what insight it gives you. It's about what is that actually offering you in your life. And what I'm proposing to you is that a little pause, not P-A-W-S. Oh, a little pause. No, a little pause just means they're cute. But then then there's the cat food to deal with. But P-A-U-S-E, a little pause. Learning to insert a little pause in your life regularly will translate into real positive change in your life. And if you do that consistently, then a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you will look back and you will be able to list hundreds of real positive changes that you can actually point to and that others will agree. And that's the real point here, is that you can get that if you approach things in the right way. If you keep looking for the next thing, the next flashy experience, the next insight, then it's likely to produce more desperation in your life. I'm not saying that those things don't sometimes work for some people. They do, maybe. But I have seen that they didn't work for me. And I have seen an awful lot of people where it does not seem to work for them in terms of producing real positive change. So having the things that you can do, that they don't have to be flashy and sexy. They just have to be the things that will actually help you to have what you really want. And the amazing thing is that when you implement those small little changes in your life consistently, then you don't even crave any of those experiences. You don't crave to, it's like, why would you, when your life is so awesome on a regular basis, imagine this. Imagine that you could wake up and immediately upon waking up, you would just feel blessed. You would know that, wow, here I am. Another opportunity. And then you could go through your day, and everything that you encounter, you could also have that same sense of, I'm blessed, it's an opportunity. And there could be a general sense of ease and contentment and peace, really knowing. In fact, not even having to know, because you never even doubt, but what you're in the right place, having the right experiences. That's actually possible. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. But most people seem to do everything they can, not knowing that they're doing that, in order to avoid that. And they do that by chasing after all the flashy experiences. Again, because of the desperation. This idea that, oh, it's really bad. I've got to do the thing now. It's now or never. I've got to get the big flashy thing in order to save me. Because if I don't get the big flashy thing to save me, then it's really bad. Without understanding that chasing after the big flashy thing means one more step to reinforce that desperation. The desperation is created because of the chasing after the flashy thing. The desperation is created and reinforced because of the sense that there's something really wrong and that you need big things in order to fix it. Whereas, honestly, what I can guarantee people can get results by applying small, simple things consistently. Because it's just small little changes. Think about it also this way. If you need some big thing to fix you, it's like using a sledgehammer, okay? So your life, here you got your life, and you're going to take a sledgehammer to it, and you're going to whack it, whack your life with the sledgehammer, hoping that it's going to put it into the right place. Now, even if by some miracle it got it into the right place, how likely are you to be able to repeat that process if you need it? Think about that, right? So it's like you got your life into the shitter, and then you use the sledgehammer to fix it, and by some miracle you got it sorted out. Now, because you didn't develop any real skills, then what's the likelihood that you're going to keep your life in a good place? Not very good. So again, your life's going to end up in the shitter, and then the only thing you know to do to fix that is to use a sledgehammer. Well, what's the likelihood the second time it's going to work? Oh, not very good. Because the likelihood that it was going to work the first time is next to zero. So if by some miracle it worked the first time, the likelihood that it's going to work the second time, it won't. Sorry that I'm raining on some people's parades, but it's just honestly doesn't work very well. Whereas if you start to just play with the little things and you understand that the way that you have been playing the game is causing you so many of these problems, then you can start to change those little things. And when you do that, your life gets better day by day. And then you don't need to fix it. And the beauty of this is that then inevitably in life, there will be things that happen that you're not expecting, right? You thought, based on what you're learning up to that moment, you thought, if I do X, then Y will be the result. But you do X and you get something totally different. And if you don't like that result, then you want to learn from that. But if you don't have the skills in place to be able to learn and adapt, then that becomes a huge setback. Your whole life gets derailed. So just the small changes is it's a much better way to approach things. So like I said, hopefully it makes sense that realizing that you can play the game differently by a different set of rules with different aims could give you better results. Hopefully that makes sense. But then, like I said, there may be certain resistance to that. So you want to learn how you can address that resistance effectively. So one of those ways would be, like I said, that you might think that if I change how I play the game, then I won't get the things that I think I want. So then just, like I said, self-honesty is really helpful for that. Just tell the truth. Is the way that you've been doing things giving you good results in terms of what you want? If it is, by all means, keep doing it, right? But chances are the way you've been doing things hasn't been giving you good results in terms of what you want, right? So you say, well, I want the $1 million and I want the mansions and I want all the things. Okay. And then my question to you is, how well has what you've been doing been working out in that regard? Do you have those things? And then for most people, the answer to that would be no. In which case, probably the way you've been doing it isn't working. Now, there's a small possibility for some people, they would say, well, see, it is working. Okay, well then the question is, why are you here? If you're totally satisfied with everything in your life, then what are you doing here? And if you really tell the truth, then the reason you're here is because, and by here I mean listening to this, okay, is because on some level you're not satisfied with the results. So if you say, well, I've got the $1 million and I've got the mansions and I've got all the stuff. Okay. But then you're not happy with something. So what is it you're not happy with? And that suggests that the way you're playing the game is not giving you good results. So you thought at some point you wanted the $1 million, and if you had the $1 million, that would give you everything that you wanted. And you got the $1 million, and then you realized it didn't give you everything that you wanted. So then the way you're playing the game is not working well for you because first of all, you were not able to even identify correctly what it is you wanted. So think about that. You have in this life, you've got, I don't know what, maybe 100 years. Let's say that, what's the guy's name? I'm not going to think of his name. The singularity guy. Let's say he's right, and you're going to be able to upload your consciousness to a computer in the cloud, and then it's nonsense, by the way. But let's just pretend. So you've got a long time now, much longer time. So let's say you've got a million years to sort this out. Even so, you've got a finite amount of time, and what are you going to? Are you using that time wisely? And how can you know if you're using that time wisely? Well, first of all, you've got to know what is your aim. What are you trying to achieve? If you don't know what you're trying to achieve, then it's like there's a story. What is this from? I'm sure it's in the Bhagavad Gita because everything is. No, I'm sorry. I'm sure it's in the Mahabharata because everything's in the Mahabharata. But I'll say it's in the. It's got to be in the Mahabharata. So there's this. There was this. I'm gonna mangle the story. There was a king who had 60,000 sons plus one or something like this, and he sent them out on this mission. And as they were going, they came across this sage. I think it was Durvasa. It wasn't Durvasa. It was somebody equally irritable, and in meditation, and they somehow upset him, and he opened his eyes and instantly turned them into ashes. And then the king, this is the part where I'm going to totally mangle it. Somehow, trying to set this right, because now these 60,000 sons they're like in limbo basically. So this has to be resolved. But the king then, for multiple generations now in this lineage, they're trying to set this right. But what happens is each of the successive kings, they say, well, I have to rule my kingdom. And I know that I've got this thing that I've got to deal with these 60,000 ancestors who need to be released and liberated, but I'll do that after I've retired. So they do their duty as the king, and then they retire to the forest, trying to liberate their ancestors and gain enlightenment and all this business, but it's too late for them because they're too old. So they each fail. And so each successive generation makes the same fundamental mistake. And it's finally resolved when there's one king who straight away in youth says, well, this is the most important thing that I have to deal with. So instead of wasting my time focused on all this other stuff that all of my previous ancestors focused their time on and didn't achieve the highest aim, I'm going to go straight away to the forest. And that way I can gain enlightenment and liberate my ancestors. So I told the story terribly. I told you I would mangle it. But the point here is this. You have a finite amount of time. And if you're using that time on things that are not important to you, then it's a waste. So if you don't know what you want, then even if you have 1 million years, even if you have 10 million years, even if you have 1 billion years, if you squander that on things that are not actually important to you, then it was for naught. I mean, it counts for nothing. You achieved absolutely nothing through that. So if you back to what I was saying about this is that if you say, well, I'm achieving all these things. I have the $1 million. I have look at my body. Look how healthy I am, and look how fit I am, and look how attractive I am, and look how everybody wants to be me, and everything is wonderful in my life. Okay. But again, if that's totally satisfying to you, then you wouldn't be here. So there's something about all that that's not completely satisfying to you, which means that none of those things actually gave you what you really wanted. So you have not yet identified what you really want. So self-honesty is really useful. Find out what you actually want. Be clear about that. And by the way, if you play the game with the aim of learning, that will help you. But if you're playing the game with other aims, most of those other aims are not going to give you as good of results, because most of those other aims are going to distract you by thinking that what you want is the things that you don't really want. Like, again, a lot of us are playing the game like, I just need more stuff. I need to be right all the time. I need to be safe. I need to be safe is a big, big, big distraction. Thank you for somebody who let me know it's Bhrigu Maharshi from Mahabharata had 60,000 sons. Thank you. I'm sure Google was very helpful for that. Or Chat GPT. Thank you, Chat GPT. No, I'm sure you knew that. But, and I'm sure you could tell the story much better than I could. I'm sorry that I mangled it. So somebody says, how do we figure out what we really want? Well, okay, glad you asked. So, put your attention on it consistently. Play the game in the right way. Okay, because if you're playing the game in the wrong way, then just notice what happens. If you think that, just to give the example, okay, so if you're somebody, I'm not saying you are this person, but just to give the example, if you're somebody who said that the way to play this game is to be right. A lot of people play the game that way, right? The way to play the game of life is to be right. So if that's the way that a person is playing the game, then that's where their attention is. So their attention is on being right. So day in and day out, they're trying to be right, trying to be right, trying to be right. They organize their whole life around trying to be right. So that's the outcome that they get. In that, what's not going to happen is they're not going to get clarity on what they really want. Because, by the way, you don't really want to be right. I mean, what's that going to give you? If you're right, then what? It's empty if you're right. So the first thing would be to play the game in a way that allows you to actually stand a chance at this. So that's why I'm proposing learning would be a useful aim. A useful way to play the game would be learning. Because that way you're going specifically learning about yourself. So then every opportunity, every moment of your life is an opportunity for learning more about yourself. And that will, by the way, when you learn more about yourself, that will give you more knowledge about what you really want, which is, by the way, to know yourself. So that's why learning about yourself is a useful way to play the game, because it directly gives you what you want, which is self-knowledge. But you have to consistently put your attention on it. So if you structure the way you play the game in such a way that you're going to be, by definition, putting your attention consistently on what you want, you will get what you want. You'll get increasing clarity on what you want, and you will achieve it. Somebody wants to know how can being safe be a distraction? So it's fine and good for us to take care of our bodies, right? Because our bodies are important vehicles for us. However, many of the masters, and maybe all the masters, but many of the spiritual masters have suggested that it is folly to fixate and grasp to those things which are transient. They teach us, they point out that it's wise to put your attention and hold fast to that which is eternal. So your body is transient. So what is eternal is the idea of safety and unsafety do not apply to what is eternal. It doesn't even apply. It doesn't even make any sense. So safety and unsafety only apply to that which is transient. And so if your attention, if you're fixated on that which is transient, then you're putting your attention in the wrong place in order to get the results that you really want. So this concern about being safe turns out to be problematic in as much as it puts your attention on that which is transient. So again, basic care of of the body is useful and important. I'm not discouraging that in any way. It's just that, and having certain routines that will facilitate the health of the body and well-being and safety of the body. So I'm not suggesting that it would be wise to go stand, like go into the middle of some war and stand in front of the gun that's being shot. I mean, unless, I don't know, I don't see there would be a good reason to do that. But somebody, think about Brahmana Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj, Yogananda, Jesus. So none of them, as far as I'm aware, said, hold fast to the body forever, no matter what. Make sure that the body's always safe. It wasn't part of their message. And it wasn't part of their life. It wasn't what they demonstrated. So this idea that we need to be safe is really just reinforcing an unhealthy attachment to that which is transient. If you're safe, the thing is, if you're safe, safety in and of itself, what does that give you? Is that actually what you want? Do you actually want safety? In and of itself, is it actually useful to you? And I'm pretty sure that if you're honest about that, you'd have to answer no. You don't. It's not really going to give you what you want. Safety in and of itself is not a thing worth having. Safety could be viewed as a means to an end, but then the question is, what is the end that you want? Because if you're just holding on to safety, then you're not putting your attention on what you really want. So what is it that safety will give you? What will safety allow you to have or experience that is important to you? Because that's what you actually want. But if you're just putting your attention on safety, then you miss out on the thing that you actually want. And so think about it. If you're only going to have safety, that you can only, because the nature of the body is transient, you can only have that safety for a certain amount of time. And again, that safety could be for 10 years or 100 years or 1,000,000 years or 1,000,000,000 years, however long it is, it's time limited because the nature of the body is transient. So that, because we could say anything that is transient is subject to this problem of decay and death by definition. So the only thing that is not subject to that is that which is eternal. If your attention, if you're trying to maintain, if you want safety for something, then your attention is by definition on that which is transient, and you're identified with it and you're attached to it. And what is it that you're going to get through that, through maintaining safety for that? In and of itself, it will give you nothing. It buys you time. That's it. What do you want to do at that time? Instead of trying to get more time, just focus on what you want that time for. Because if you get safety, if you get perfect safety, if you were able to achieve that, and you could sustain that for a 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000 years, you've put so much energy and attention into that, and let's say you've perfected it, but there will come a point at which you'll lose it. And then how much time do you have remaining? Maybe not much. Wouldn't it be better just to use the time that you have now to focus on what you really want? Somebody's suggesting to be fearless. So the thing about fear only makes sense in the context of that which is transient again. So true fearlessness is really just to no longer be attached or identified with that which is transient, and instead to focus on what you really want. Because what you really want is not to be without fear. What you really want is fearlessness is the natural result of you having clarity about what you really want and putting your attention on that. So a lot of other questions I think are coming up in the chat, and I'll respond to those during the group the group coaching in a moment. So for those who are here live, stand for that. And for everybody else, for everybody, I just want to recap. So it's possible for you to live a life of real fulfillment. In fact, it's not only possible, it's the purpose of your life. I mean, what else are you here for? And the challenge, the question is, when you think about everything else that you're doing in your life, how fulfilling is that really to you? Is that really giving you the results that you want? And if it's not, which it's not for the most part, then the invitation is to actually take a look at a deeper level and find out what are the rules that you're using to play this game? Because you can choose to do it differently. That's totally within your power. Nobody else is making you do anything. You're not forced to do anything. And it's really up to you. And I encourage you to choose that which will really support what you actually want. So be courageous and be truly loving. Be willing to play this game in a way that really gives you good results. And I've suggested that one very useful way to play the game is with the aim of learning. And that learning fundamentally is about learning about yourself. It's about self-knowledge. And if you play it in that way, then you will gain increasing insight into everything that you really want, because everything that you really want is, and you've heard this before probably, is who you actually are. So all those qualities of your true self is what you really want. You desire to know those things. And you can do that. But in order to do that, you just have to apply yourself. So just take stock, take inventory, and notice, how have you been playing this game? Know that you're empowered to choose differently, and that it's good and right for you to do so. Because by definition, your time here is limited. Use it wisely. Don't waste time on things that are not important to you. Don't waste time playing the game by rules that are not actually aligned with what you really want. And this is really good news, and it's not hard. You can choose right now. You can start doing that right now. And I promise you, make those small changes consistently, day by day, and you will find that your life is transformed. The life that I described to you earlier is really possible for you. You could wake up feeling connected, happy, joyful, peaceful, harmonious, enthusiastic about your life, about life itself. It's possible. No matter what your starting point is, that's possible for you. And it doesn't have to be that far off. But if you keep playing and thinking, oh, it's desperate, I have to win in a big way, I have to, I have to take some kind of desperate measures in order to finally set things right, then you're going to just probably make things worse. So I really encourage you to take a look and find out that you can make this change. It's not hard, and it will really transform your life in a beautiful, positive way. Just make it consistently, sincerely, every day. So that's it for me today. For those who are here live, stay on for group coaching. And for those who are watching this on YouTube, if you're interested in joining these calls live, you're welcome to do so. You can find out more. You can get that information by signing up for my email lists at joylife.com. And for those who are interested in a supported program that supports you in creating a simple, sustainable lifestyle for yourself that will allow you to achieve these results, you may be interested in the Manifesting Truth program, and that is available through joylot.com/manifesting-truth, and that's a paid program. You can learn more there. And all those links will be in the description below. So blessings to you all, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.